My name's Lena. I think nature's pretty fab. In fact, I've spent the last kind of 5 years being a bit worried about nature, and I happen to really like being surrounded by it. So much so that I like to buy houseplants. This is what some of my houseplants look like, but if I love nature so much, how come most of the houseplants I've ever bought end up looking like this? Or like this, or this? And it got me thinking, am I broken, or is it the system? And as a millennial, I like to think that maybe it could be the system. Personal flaws? I don't think so. Don't catch me with any introspection. I'm kidding, but I'm also not kidding. I have been thinking, some might say, a little bit too hard about the history of houseplants and how we interact with them in the modern day. So let me take you on a little turn about the gardens and give you a potted history of my rambled thoughts on this topic and the unexpected conclusion I've come to. Now, to be sure, lockdowns and COVID brought with it a rise in plantfluencers and all of us feeling a little bit cooped up, understandably. And therefore, the sales of houseplants went absolutely through the roof. Some of the reports I found said it was up 500%. But our obsession with houseplants is by no means a new thing. It's older than the Bible, and I consider the Bible to be pretty freaking old. If you think about it, in every culture, it makes sense. Once we start living indoors, we start bringing those plants indoors, especially the ones that we cook with and the ones that we heal with. But evidence of decorative houseplants goes back as far as the Egyptians and sometimes even further. We know that the Victorians were absolutely obsessed with filling their houses with plants, which is why when you visit any big old grand house in Britain, at least, you'll see a lot of conservatories and a hell of a lot of very ornate greenhouses. But it was only when a little thing called the Industrial Revolution hit Britain that people from the countryside, who would be mainly spending all of their time outdoors or a lot of their time outdoors, so why would they bring it inside, started moving into city areas, and one, kind of missing the countryside, that was a bit of a weird flip, and two, started getting exciting things like central heating, meaning that it was possible for them to keep all of these kind of exotic plants from other countries they've been seeing all the rich people have. They might be able to actually keep them in their own homes. Very exciting. And a little bit Pokemon Catch Them All colonialist, but who am I to begrudge a poverty-stricken factory worker the joy of a little spider plant? Now, I've always thought of houseplants as an organic thing, and I'm not technically wrong. If you touch, they're made out of organic matter, and they indeed do look like things that I would see outside of my house in nature, so it makes sense. But I'm also really wrong. It might go without saying, but these plants don't naturally grow in Britain. They are bits of mass-produced farming that have been essentially displaced from where they were designed to grow. Now, as soon as I get a plant home from a shop, it doesn't seem that energy intensive to me. I'm using the same central heating in my house that I use to heat my body, to heat the plants. That isn't a difference. I use a tiny dribble of water every now and then to water them, some more than others. But what it hadn't occurred to me was the life that my plants had before they entered my home. And when you think about it, scaling this up and trying to grow this many plants at that kind of scale, yeah, it turns out that takes a lot of resources, not only to keep them hot, but to keep them necessarily watered. And you don't realise how old a plant is when you buy it from a plant shop. Succulents take about 1.5 years to grow before they're ready to sell. Cheese plants can take anything between 15 months to 12 years. And a bonsai tree, yeah, that takes 15 years to grow before you get it. And then there's a thing called plant miles. If you buy your plant in the UK, it is almost impossible, nay, incredibly unlikely that it has been grown in Britain. Odds on it's probably been grown in the Netherlands, and if it wasn't grown in the Netherlands, it was probably grown in Italy or Belgium. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to stack a houseplant, or even if you've ever moved house with a houseplant, you'll know that they're not incredibly space efficient, which means that they have to be transported in these incredibly big lorries with lots of space above them, temperature controlled, long distances, have to get them there fast. It all becomes a little bit of a circus, even trying to get it to a shop near you. And some stats I found suggested that once you're buying it from a shop near you, it's probably travelled over 200 miles already. Then there's a use of peat in the soil, which we literally don't have the time and I don't have the expertise to go into in this video, but there's lots of information about why peat is actually a massively important thing thing for nature. It's a carbon sink. We like to keep the peat where it is, in the bogs, please. Plus the plastic stuff that we buy our plants in once we kill a plant. Oh, looking at nobody. Oh. We usually put these in landfill. I think only like 10% apparently of councils recycle this kind of plastic that they usually use, and like billions of them go into landfill, and even just in the UK every single year. So I'm kind of at this point in my research getting a bit stressed, I'll be honest. But then I thought, it's all right, because they make me happy. They like purify the air or something. They're like medically good for me. I would love you to contradict me, but every single study that I found on this topic either says that that's just not that true, or that most studies about like houseplants making you happier are self-reported. They have no control groups, or they're done from people who are like in hospital, and like if you put a plant by somebody who's in hospital, like by their bed, they'll get a little bit happier, but that's like probably because they're in hospital and they're kind of like already at a lower base rate of miserable and don't usually have access to see things outside or be able to go outside. So that would make sense, but it doesn't mean that it's like necessarily applicable to me when I'm not in hospital. Do you know what I mean? All signs point to the effect of houseplants being good for your mental health being either placebo or, excuse me for the joke, very patchy. However, there is hope. I read this book called Losing Eden and quite a few other reports about the effect of actually being outdoors, and for that we are absolutely spoiled for evidence. Our microbacteria turns out way healthier when we're actually outdoors. That's because we're being exposed to a really diverse set of microbes rather than just like sitting near my one spider plant and rubbing it on my teeth. Yes, actually we are absorbing microbiomes through our teeth cavities and our pharynx, which improves our immune system, something called our gut-brain axis, according to this book, which also by proxy improves our mental health. Taking walks in nature has also been shown to have huge amounts of effect on people with ADHD and autism. Studies have shown that just 2 hours of walking in the forest can soothe inflammation in the blood. And there's evidence to show that the type of bacteria you find in soil can create serotonin in your brain, which is the chemical we're trying to produce with antidepressants. All signs point to maybe we should stop worrying about houseplants and get outdoors. But what's preventing us? Oh, I can't think of it. It begins with a C. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, half of our ancient woodlands have been lost in the past 80 years. In the 20th century, we lost 97% of our lowland meadows. Not that that would matter because we don't really have much access to almost any of our own land as it is anyway, thanks to all these people buying it up and not giving us the right to roam. And not that even matters, because most of us don't have enough time within our days or our weeks or our years to really ramble, to really stay outside for long periods of time, or sometimes even short periods of time, leading to the average toddler in the UK spending less time outside than the legal requirement for a UK prisoner, which is just 1 hour. Now, I refuse to get miserable about this. Instead, I choose to be curious. And something I was thinking about when I thought about houseplants was that very rarely do people think that getting houseplants is altruistic. They're never like, I just had to rescue this houseplant. I saw it in Oliver Bonus, I saw it in M&S, I saw it in Tesco, and I thought, without me, this plant will die. No, we get houseplants because we want them. It's essentially a selfish act, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that like we want the thing. We know that it might be good for us in some way, if not just like visually it looks nice and it makes us happy to look at, or we believe that chemically it's going to change our brains and clean the air in our flats and apartments, which I thought was genuinely a fact, and now I can't find any solid evidence for, so I'm throwing that one to the birds. But it did make me think about this like traditional idea of environmentalism being something that we do for like other people or for the planet, and it's like something that makes us good people. And I think what puts our backs up about people who talk about environmentalism in really annoying, obnoxious ways is that we feel like they're telling us to be selfless, like they even know us, we're very nice people, and how dare they think that they're nicer than us? And by the way, why should we stop being selfish when all of the rich people are being even more selfish? Why are they putting it on us? On learning all this information, instead of turning that into the feeling of being bashful that I ever wanted these things in the first place, or in all honesty, I'm probably going to keep them and look after them and maybe even buy a few more, who knows? It's because it signals to me this inherent misunderstanding I have always had about the planet and the movement to save it, is in that it's inherently a selfish act. And actually, even in my most pessimistic moments, when I believe that humans are capable of almost nothing good, I know that they're incredible of incredible selfishness. And what is more selfish than preventing climate breakdown? We want it. We're taking it home. It's ours. I'm going to pot that. They can't steal that from me. They can't destroy that. And that's why I have hope in a weird, twisted way. If what's required of us is selfishness, well, we're very, very equipped. I'm mainly joking. Like, there is a really lovely side to the plantfluencer movement. And I think my inherent good-natured side of me that wants to look after plants and keep them alive, even though sometimes I may fail miserably. We want to care about things, we want to nurture them, we want to spend a long time with them, we're willing to commit to things. We're becoming a generation for whom having a home that's permanent, having children, even being able to have pets because of renting, seems increasingly more and more expensive. And using plants to make us feel at home is completely understandable. But I'm wondering if we can extend that instinctual protectiveness, instinctual desire for greenery, and make sure we make ourselves feel more at home in the country that we live in, and in the city that we live in, or the town or the field that we live in, and trying to make that more ours. And when people try to not let us have access to that or harm it, we get as indignant as if somebody came into our house at a house party and pissed on our spider plant. That's how annoyed I want to be. It would be completely logical to be that way, and yet I struggle to feel it all the time. I hear the stats about the fact that we don't have any forests left, or that we don't have any access to the ancient lands around us, and I struggle to get as angry about it as I might be at myself when I kill a plant. And I don't know where that fury has gone and if I can get it back. So on top of giving you practical solutions that I'm going to try and follow, which is, if I'm going to buy soil, I'm going to try and buy peat-free soil. If I'm going to get plastic containers to repot the little babies my plants are having, I'm going to try and get them second hand. I'm also going to try and get cuttings from friends. Quite a few of these are actually cuttings from friends and family members that I've grown from the cuttings, which is like 20 million times less CO2 and waste than buying one from a shop. Or you can even look for plant swaps in your area, or informally agree to swap plants and cuttings with neighbours. But on top of all of that, what I want for me, and possibly for you, a fellow houseplant lover, is that we start transferring our fixation on these tiny green bits of plant that really shouldn't be growing here in this climate, and start giving ourselves permission to widen that instinct and apply it to more logical, different and bigger situations. When I was researching, I found this quote from Edward O. Wilson, who is a botanist, and he said, "On Earth, no less than in space, lawn grass, potted plants, caged parakeets, puppies and rubber snakes are not enough." And that's kind of what I've come to the conclusion of when it comes to how I think about my houseplants. They're not enough. We deserve more. We deserve more time to be outside. We deserve more outside to access. We deserve a planet where the outside isn't being completely crushed before our eyes. So let's fight for it. Let's piss off our MPs. Let's make sure we get our lunch breaks in full and spend them outdoors. Let's petition to make sure more of us can work from home and therefore work a little bit more rurally, so we're not all jam-packed in these tiny polluted spaces. That was a wake-up call for me, was living in London during the first part of the pandemic and being like, it's okay because I can go to the parks, and then realising there weren't enough parks for everybody, and I couldn't even stand on the pavement in a park or a path because they were so crowded. That's what scared me. And then personally, I mean, I'm sorry for another day, but one of the seeds that planted in my head where I was like, maybe I should leave here. Maybe this isn't safe. Anyway, where was I? Yes, we deserve better. And your instinct for plants and houseplants in particular is maybe telling you that, and you just have to start listening. And when I say you, I really mean me. Thank you so much for watching. My shed doesn't usually look like this. I only did this because I knew that you were coming round, but I hope you enjoyed being here. If you want to see more of me, especially of me in the shed, which I've done a few videos on, you can subscribe. That would be lovely if you would stick around. This video is made possible and not interrupted by any advertisers because of the Gumption Club. They tip me per video to make sure these videos keep happening, and so I don't have to take on weird sponsors to tell you to buy something, ironically, when I'm making a video about maybe not buying stuff. I have a book coming out soon all about not giving yourself such a hard time and instead learning to think more deeply about the things you worry about rather than berating yourself. It's called Half-Ass Human, and you can pre-order it in the links below this video. That would be amazing. Thank you so much for watching. You're still here. That's nice. Should we go in for a cup of tea? It's getting a bit chilly. Yeah, it's getting a bit chilly. Did you notice that I'm wearing a houseplant top? Yeah, I know. Frog Snog, out.